Hi, I'm Helena Signori. Welcome to another video on ideas for catechists on my YouTube channel called Help, I'm a Catechist. I'm a retired Catholic school teacher with 22 years of experience teaching in second grade. I published this book on the real presence for children to use in my classroom. I love to use books in the classroom. This one's called I Am, the Mystery of the Real Presence of Christ in the Eucharist for Children. But I wanted to share, since I have retired from teaching, other people's books. So today I'm going to be featuring Just the Way You Are by the famous author Max Lucado. And if you're not familiar with this story, you might even be able to get this one at the public library. Max Lucado in this story has disguised God as a king who comes to adopt some orphan children. And the orphan children want to get ready for the king and give him a gift. So they all begin to use their gifts, whatever individual gifts and talents they have, to get ready for the king. One of the children doesn't feel like she has any gifts or talents, and she keeps trying to be what the other children are. One is a wood carver, one is an artist, one is a singer musician, and one is a student who just is really into learning, which is not a bad thing, but he gets kind of up in his head. And the story happens that the king comes to town disguised, and the only one who gives him the time of day is the little girl who doesn't think she has any gifts. She helps him, she listens to him, and at the end of the story, when he comes back and says the children he came to see didn't have time for him, she realizes he's the king, and she says that, how can he love her because she doesn't have anything to offer? And he says that she gives him the best gift of all, her heart. Now, this story, I think, as the title says, Just the Way You Are, has a lot of different ways you can use it. So in my classroom, we would take a look, either before reading this story or after reading the story, however you prefer, at what are my gifts. So students would maybe meditate for a minute or two, write down a few ideas. If they're a younger child, this would be good for ages 2 up to even 5th grade. 4th and 5th graders like picture books still. So you can ask them, what do you think your gifts are? What are you good at, right? And try to ask them to not say video games, but they can include it on their list. Try to ask them to include at least something else. And then go around the room and make a list of different gifts that kids say they have. Now, I have had students who don't think they have any gifts, just like the little girl in the story. So sometimes what I do is I then go around and do an affirmation, and I ask students to raise their hand for everybody. Little Johnny says he has one gift. Can anybody else raise your hand and tell us something else that you think that he or she is good at? And that way we have others looking at us and seeing things in ourselves that we don't always appreciate. Just like the little girl in the story didn't appreciate that she was kind and thoughtful and helpful, all wonderful things. Another thing that should be discussed in this lesson is, how can I use these gifts for God, right? So in the story, the woodcarver, the artist, the singer, musician, the student who wants to keep learning and expanding his brain, those are all good things, but they ignore the giver. They don't realize, and that's the connection we have to make for the students in the story, they don't realize that they get so wrapped up in who they are, they forget to thank God, or the King of Kings, for the gifts they have received. So I then have my students write a prayer thanking God for the gifts they have been given, for who they are as a person. At the end of the story, we are reminded that we are all special to God. And it doesn't matter how great or how small our gifts are. But to me, the most important thing in the story besides that is that we should not ignore the gift giver, that we should always be grateful to God for the big and the small gifts that we have received, and remember to use these gifts for Him. So just The Way You Are is a great story to use as a springboard by Max Lucado. And if you don't have access to the story, you could still do this activity as just a discussion. Another thing you could do is get maybe some dollar store boxes and wrap them empty and hand them out to each student. And when they open that box, say to them, there's nothing in the box because the box represents who you are. And I want you to put a little piece of paper in that box today. And every time you can think of a gift that God has given you, you could add it to your box. And remember that you are a gift because God made you. So that's one way you could use a little prop and something they could take home. Or if it's a younger child, maybe just draw a picture of a gift and they could draw themselves inside that picture doing an activity for God that shows them using one of their gifts or talents. And also remind them that they will be discovering new gifts and talents as they grow older, but they should always try to remember to thank God for their gifts and see how He wants them to use them. So I hope you can use this activity in the classroom, and God bless you.